Champions Mojo is part of the CG Sports Network.
Welcome to the award-winning Champions Mojo, hosted by two world record-holding athletes and health, life, and leadership coaches. Be inspired as you listen to Conversations with Champions. And now, your hosts, Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast. And as usual, I am co-hosting with Maria Parker. Hello, Maria.
Hi, sister. How are you doing?
Doing great. And we have our guest there who we're going to introduce in a second. Kristen, welcome to Champions Mojo.
Thank you so much.
So today we are so delighted to be welcoming Christen Shefchunas, the author of the upcoming book, 30 Days to Confident, a 30-day confidence challenge for female athletes. So Kristen is a confidence coach, but as a swimmer, she started from being a walk-on at the University of Tennessee to captain of the team and a four-time All-American. She went on then to be a swim coach for 16 years, ending up as the head coach at the University of Miami. Her first 4 years there were a little bit difficult, and then she changed her approach and began really having success. Maria, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, Kelly. According to Kristen, she finally stopped blaming everyone else and took a look at herself. And she began using her unique gifts as a coach. She developed confidence coaching and began meeting one-on-one with her swimmers at the University of Miami, who then began having great success. Eventually, Kristen left swim coaching and started working one-on-one and to groups of women athletes and women in business about confidence. Kristen has worked with multiple Olympians, including Missy Franklin, Natalie Hines, Haley Flickinger, and we're excited to welcome her and learn from her today. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, welcome, Kristen. So, Kristen, on our podcast here, Maria and I have interviewed multiple NCAA Division I head coaches. In fact, I think strangely, of the 7 Olympic swimming coaches right now for 2021, I think we've had 5 or 6 of the 7 or 8 on this podcast. So one of the things that we hear from all these coaches is there is a crisis of confidence in their female swimmers. And we're blown away. So can you just kind of talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Coaching, I would get so frustrated because I remember being in, the coaches area and the hospitality room and stuff like that. And I remember seeing coaches, throwing their papers, and they were just so upset because these women who worked so hard in practice, they were warriors in practice, and they would get to a meet and fail, in such a big way. And it was because of the lack of confidence. And, it would frustrate me because I'd hear they're psycho or they're head cases or, and call them names. And, I just want to be like, they're afraid. They're afraid. That's it. Like if we would just stop ignoring the fact that they're afraid and teach them how to handle that fear, they would be performing, so much better. So it's been very frustrating because every coach out there knows that there is a crisis with confidence when it comes to their female athletes, yet nothing ever seems to change.
So how is it different for the females versus the male athletes?
Well, I always describe it because we know that there's, men's and women's brains. Yeah, they're a little bit different, right? And I always say that, as women, we have about 1,200 thoughts going on at all times, where men usually, are simpler.
3.
Right?
They have 3.
3 max. I mean, usually,
Tired.
it's 1. So, I always say as we process our thoughts, we almost always run into a what if. And when we run into that what if, we don't walk into it going, what if this is the greatest day of my life? What if everything goes perfectly? We're thinking about every worst case scenario, and we are throwing ourselves into panic with those what ifs. So, what I do, the very first thing that I do with my clients is let's get real and get honest about what is truly going through your mind as you're standing behind the blocks, or you're about to walk onto the field, or, whatever sport you're a part of. Because so far, I've been doing this for a really long time, and I haven't met one female athlete that doesn't struggle with this.
Yeah, that is so perfectly put about women's brains are different. So that was Maria asked it in one way, and I was going to ask it in another way, why women do that. But it makes sense to be this, we do every single scenario. And so that bad scenario scares us. So if we've got listeners that are doing anything, I mean, we have a lot of swimmer listeners, but we also have a lot of other listeners who maybe doing another sport or trying something new, that they're doing a what if scenario. So what would you tell someone listening that has that what if scenario? How do they deal with that?
Well, I think, first of all, when we get into, why these what ifs happen, I think it's important to remember that, when you're walking into a situation where there are no guarantees, right? In sports, there are absolutely no guarantees, and we are uncomfortably vulnerable. I mean, just so uncomfortable. It feels as if we have very little control. And I think we can all agree women love control. We want control. And I think when we start these what ifs, we're trying to predict the future, because if we know the outcome, or we think we know the outcome, then we feel like we have a little bit more control. But again, two big problems. Number one, we go worst case scenario and scare ourselves. But number two, we can't predict the future. I mean, as I tell all my clients, like, you're not a fortune teller. Like, you cannot predict what's going to happen until it happens. So I think it's all about, first of all, being aware of what those what ifs are. Everybody has to write them down. As I tell them, nothing can shock me at this point. I have heard it all. Get to know them, be prepared for them, and realize, hey, I'm out in the future trying to predict, how this is going to go. We need to get back into, what do I know right now? And this is where, everything that I teach always comes back to truth for a woman. And this is a difference, I think, between men and women as well. So many athletes, Haley, one of them, she said, from a young age, she's been taught to stand behind the blocks. I will be great today. I will swim fast today. I will break a record today. But there was a problem, because down deep, they didn't actually believe it. And I am such a big believer that, sorry guys, women are way too smart to con themselves into believing something that we don't actually believe. We have this down deep that always tells us the truth. So if we're sitting there going, I got this, and down deep, it's like, you sure about that? Like, that's not something, that's not full truth to us that we can really put our focus on. So what we put our focus on has to be absolutely true to us.
And so what might that be in her case, or in another client's
Yeah.
case?
And so for listeners, we're talking about Haley Flickener, who just made her second Olympic team. She had an outstanding Olympic trials and had a lot of pressure on her going into the Olympic trials, like Natalie Hyon, she worked with too. So, so that's the Haley we're talking about. So what did you work with Haley on saying behind the block?
Or maybe somebody else.
Yeah. Or somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have four clients on the US team right now. And, let me go to Haley, because it's an easy one. In swimming, what if I die? What if this hurts? That's always such a huge what if that a lot of people struggle with. And so when I first started working with Haley back in 2018, what if this hurts, right? So I said to Haley, finally, I was like, it's a 200 long course fly. Like,
It's gonna hurt.
It's going to hurt.
No question about it.
What do you do in practice when it hurts? I mean, I keep fighting and I finish. Okay. So, what if I die? What if this hurts? her truth is, yeah, it's going to hurt, but I also know I'm going to fight and I'm going to finish. That's something she doesn't have to con herself into believing. She, truly, fully believes and knows about herself. She'll always show up and she'll always fight.
So you help people find their truths, which I just love that, because if we're lying to ourselves, we can't get anywhere. As you're talking about this, I'm thinking of all the little, we in CBT, it's catastrophizing. If I fail at this, my family will hate me. I will embarrass, whatever, those are my what ifs. So, it's once you identify them and put them out there, they lose some of their power, I guess. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, another big piece of this is, what I've learned about fear is that everyone is experiencing it, but everyone also thinks they're the only one experiencing it. And when you think you're the only one up there experiencing it, you think, what's wrong with me, right? I must be weak. I must not be mentally tough. There must be something wrong with me. And, part of my purpose, in doing this is to understand that you're not alone. Like, every single person is struggling, and it's 100% normal. I had an athlete, a few weeks ago at trials say, this is the first time that I'm not freaking out because I'm freaking out. Like, it's okay, but we start freaking out. We start getting nervous and go, oh God, what's wrong with me? I shouldn't be this way. And it's like, you have a shot of making the Olympic team. Like, are you kidding me? This is scary, and that's okay. But, we need to learn how to handle those fears when they do come.
So in looking at some of your talks, and you're not only a confidence coach, but a great speaker. You often say, I'm afraid and it's okay. So can you just expand on that a little bit? Like, how that ties in with your truth and what to do with that if you're, behind the blocks or on the starting line or about to give a speech or something. I'm afraid and it's okay.
Yeah. I loved how you one time described fear as like a big colorful bird that we all try to ignore.
Oh yeah. And that was my career. And let me say, as you gave my bio, it sounds so impressive that I walked on at Tennessee and then, became out a 4-time All-American, but those All-American certificates are from relays, because anytime that I stood up individually, I choked big time. So, that's what I do. I describe fear as a big, colorful bird. It's flapping its wings. It's right here, by our ear, and it's chirping all these what ifs and all these fears. And the only way we've learned how to handle it is to go, I don't see you. I don't see you. And that's my career in a nutshell. I was scared to death, but I felt like a weakling. I felt something was wrong with me. So I'm not going to talk about it. The other 7 women standing up here must be fearless. Something's wrong with me. So I just did my best to just pretend, it wasn't there. But the problem is just because you pretend it's not there doesn't mean it's not there. And it certainly doesn't mean that it's not affecting you, in a negative way. So everybody's got the bird chirping in their ear, whether it be behind the blocks, like I said, or during during your competition, or whenever it's there. So I'm just such a big believer of, hey, let's turn around and say, I see you. What if I disappoint everybody? I see you. What if I fail? Be honest about it so we can, create a plan to move forward from it. But, I'm afraid and it's okay takes away that, what's wrong with me? Why am I freaking out? Why am I so nervous? I think something I've been thinking about lately is, the reason you're so afraid is because you care. Like, that's a great thing, like, if you didn't care, there wouldn't be, any fear. And I always use Missy Franklin as an example as well, because in 2012, when she was the princess of the Olympics and she was breaking world records and she was winning all these gold medals, through her career up to that point, there wasn't a whole lot that went wrong. Right. So there's not she didn't have, like, of course she had, some what ifs, but there weren't a lot of them, because when everything's going right, there's not really a whole lot to be afraid of. But then after 16 and the nightmare for her, when we first started working together and I asked her to write down her what ifs, let me tell you, I got a lot of them back. So, I think it's just important to remember, and this is why I don't work with super young kids,
Right.
because they're not going to get it, because they haven't failed enough yet. If you failed, what if it happens again?
So
Right.
I think one of the things that makes you so effective is your authenticity, that, the stories about your life, you're also humble. But so I'm just going to ask you an authentic question. What's your current, I'm afraid right now, but it's okay.
This book coming out.
What might happen?
I mean, it's vulnerability. And, I like everybody to like me. I don't like it when people don't like me. I don't like it when people are talking behind my back or saying, and I know not everybody's going to get it. And there's going to be negative feedback, and even though I feel I'm very, very proud of it. But yeah,
What's your truths? What are your truths about this?
I'll use what I use when I speak. Before I speak, I always say, when I'm speaking in front of athletes, I'm not as nervous because I know they're going to get it. When I speak in front of business women, who is this stupid swim coach coming up here talking to us? What does she even have to say? What I have to remind myself of is, they didn't bring me in here to talk about algebra, because that would be disastrous. They brought me in to speak about confidence. And that's what I do. I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm really good at it. And I know for a woman to say I'm really good at something is hard. And it took me a while to get comfortable saying it, but that is a truth for me. I feel like I am good at what I do. And I really believe that this book is going to be helpful. Will it help everybody? No, but I do believe that it's going to help a lot of women move forward from their fears and build some confidence.
That's beautiful.
So that's great. We really look forward to seeing the book, which is coming out in August. So when someone does your work and then they develop this toolkit of being confident, do you see a leap or a potential leap for women to start saying, I've got this, I'm good, I'm confident, I'm going to kick butt? I mean, I know the one person, because, we talk about neural pathways and training the brain and starting to really switch from adding a negative what if to a positive what if. And I don't think you can talk about confidence within female athletics and not mention Lily King, because I think she's like the one, and she is the 1.01% of an athlete that stands behind the block and probably she's probably nervous because she wants to race. But so all of that said, I personally feel that Lily has mastered that neural pathway of, I've got this, I'm good, I worked hard. She says a lot of people got on Lily at an NCAA's post, I think it was her post junior or senior year. She was interviewed and they said, what'd you think of that race? And she said, yeah, I know no one has worked harder than I have. So a lot of people thought, oh, that was awful for Lily to say because she doesn't know how hard everybody else has worked. But it was just one way of owning what she did to be that confident. And so I think I've laid the background for you to answer the question. Can women athletes make this leap from the bird to then bridging it to being as confident as somebody like Lily King?
Yeah. Let me say, if a man said I've worked harder than anybody else, no one would question him.
Absolutely.
Right?
Of course not.
Of course not.
We're huge Lily King fans because of that. Yeah.
We have to be humble and
Right.
Don't get me started. So I think that she is, she's had a career where a whole lot has not gone wrong.
Right.
So it's a lot easier. She knows every time she stands up, there's a very, very, very good chance that she's going to win. So no doubt that she has expectations for herself that she holds herself to. And so what if that doesn't happen? 100%. So far, in working with people, I haven't worked with any. If you knew what my week was like during Olympic trials and, getting the texts and the I'm terrified and the tears and the, I'm not going to say it on here, but people were absolutely terrified. It didn't matter, it didn't matter that they've learned how to handle their fears. Like being terrified was still there, but it was, one of my Olympians said, it's like, you go down a rabbit hole, right? And when you're in fear, you go down this rabbit hole and you keep going and it gets darker and darker and the fear gets bigger and bigger and bigger. She said, it's not that I don't go in the rabbit hole. She goes, but I take a couple steps in and go, this isn't where I want to be. I need to go, somewhere else. And this phrase actually started with Natalie Hines in 18 when we started working together was, you're gonna go there. You just can't stay there. And so giving people giving them grace, because again, we start beating ourselves up. What's wrong with me that I'm afraid? What's wrong with me that I'm nervous? There's nothing wrong. You're gonna go there. You just can't stay there. And, going back to Lily, Carolyn Joyce was very, very similar. She said in swimming, she didn't have a lot of confidence issues, but she said in other areas of her life, she struggled. But when it came to swimming, there wasn't a whole lot to be afraid of. But again, before 12, when, she had a bit of a rough year, there was a lot that went right with her career.
So is the goal for us as women or in general to get to the place where we're just purely confident, or just deal with it one step at a time?
I think confidence is being honest. I think confidence always revolves around truth. If you have to fake it, you're not going to find confidence anywhere. So I think you got to be real. And if you're struggling with the fear, you got to be honest about it, and learn how to handle it. Because like you said, as we keep it in, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It loves darkness. But when we have the courage, to speak it out and get it out of us, does it fully take it away? No, but I do believe that it makes it small enough that we can step over it to move into our potential.
Yeah.
I'm just sick of women beating themselves up because they're afraid. It's okay.
Yeah.
We all are. We care.
Yeah.
It's not about being fearless. It's about, learning how to handle the fears when they come.
That's probably true for everyone, but especially for, I would imagine, a high level athlete who is used to winning. And there's not a lot of cozy support systems up there behind the blocks. We're not all hugging each other before and going, yay. So you have something called confidence nuggets. And I know, and Kelly and I both coach, we have something that's called an anchor, which is like a visual reminder. So talk about confidence nuggets in that way.
Yeah, so it started when I was at Miami, because I started noticing one of the first women that I started working with, and she actually got vulnerable, and it completely changed her career when she admitted her what ifs and stuff. So I remember in practice, anytime that I would validate her or say good job, almost always I got a please, it wasn't that good. It should have been faster. It should have been this. It should have been that. And I realized she never felt like anything was good enough. Well, once I saw it in her, I started kind of seeing it everywhere in women. We never give ourselves credit. We have big goals. We're willing to work really hard to get those goals, but we never give ourselves credit. And then, of course, the second thing that I started seeing was, as athletes, they could do 99 things right in practice and one thing wrong. And they were always walking out focused on that one thing wrong and beating themselves up for that one thing wrong. And I thought, to be confident, we need to feel prepared. Like that's, no ifs, ands, or buts. Like, we need to feel prepared. But if we're never giving ourselves credit and we're only focused in on what we're doing wrong, it's not possible. You're not going to feel prepared. And so came up with this theory. I envisioned our confidence as gold nuggets. I have no idea why or where that came from, but everybody knows what a gold nugget looks like. And I thought, we have a goal. If we take a step toward that goal and actually give ourselves credit, gain a gold nugget, pay attention to the 99 things we're doing right, gain gold nuggets, pay attention to that one thing we did wrong, but what was your effort like? I'm going to give myself credit that I kept fighting, gain gold nuggets. So by the time we're at our goal, we got this mountain of gold nuggets, which, hey, I'm prepared. Look at this mountain, right? It's proof. So went out and bought a bucket of gold beads and put them in the locker room at Miami and told them, hey, anytime you take a step toward your goal, I want you to take one of these, and it can be your visual reminder. It's a long, long story that I won't go into. Some women were too cool and they didn't want to do it, but the women that actually bought into the idea, it was really cool to see them, build up these confidence nuggets. And then, I called them confidence nuggets. I forgot to say that. And a lot of them started putting a bead on a pin on their backpack. So when we would go away to competitions, when they would, what if I'm not prepared? What if I didn't do enough? What if, all those ones that I hear all the time, having that little bead was just their visual reminder of their truth, that they were prepared, and they had done the work. So in end of 14, I met Katie Miley, who won bronze in Rio. And anyway, we started working together at the very beginning of 15. Obviously, as she learned how to handle her fears and stuff like that, she got better and better and better, ended up making the Olympic team. So one of the things that she liked to do was before every competition, she would write down 10 reasons why she was going to swim fast. And that was her truth that she could focus in on when the fears came. So anyway, when she made the Rio Games, I took the confidence nuggets because she knew the whole story, because I have a big lesson behind it. Made her a bracelet with 10 of those confidence nuggets on it to represent the 10 reasons why she was going to swim fast. And so when she walked into Rio and got scared to death, she could look down at her wrist and be reminded, of her truth. And so she told me she didn't take it off the entire Olympic Games. The only time she did take it off was to swim. And she still kept it at the top of her swim bag just to catch a glimpse, because it became that important to her. Because when we are in panic mode and our brain shuts down, having that little visual reminder got her back to her truth. So when she came back and told me how much it had helped, I started making more bracelets with one confidence nugget, and then each, color or pattern represents a truth that we as women so often forget. I am courageous, I am determined, I do belong, I am enough, I am worthy. There's
They're beautiful. They're on the website. We'll put that in the show notes. They're beautiful.
Thank you. They're,
Yeah.
and I was just telling somebody, Natalie doesn't even wear her bracelets very often, but she keeps them in her swim bag, and she just wants to touch them, before she swims. Like I said, just to have that little reminder can make such a big difference.
Yeah. We, this works for business women too. I mean, it's not just for,
Athletes.
Athletes. So, we talk a lot about celebrating,
Success.
Maria and I feel like people don't celebrate success enough. So it's just another thing that, not just women, but a lot of men too. I coach, actually, I think I'm coaching all men right now, but, that they say they don't celebrate enough. And so I think that's just beautiful. So those nuggets can work for anyone. And in the interest of time, we could just talk all day. You're obviously a champion at, what you've done. You were a champion swimmer, but also what you've just done in life. What would you say 2 or 3 of your best practices that you do consistently, like routines and habits or rituals that have made you successful?
Well, I speak my truth. Counseling is very important to me, but also every Tuesday night, two of my best friends come over and we have wine and we just vomit our truth and just, full, down deep stuff. Because I always, as I tell my athletes, like what you won't admit now, it's too embarrassing, I don't want to talk about it, is going to be what bites you in your butt, in your biggest moment. So certainly speaking truth, and then, also giving myself some grace. I was just having this conversation. We're so hard on ourselves. I'm a person, I know I'm the type of woman who always gives my best. What my best looks like that day differs, but on those days when my best is ugly, I've learned to give myself some grace and remind myself that I'm doing my best and give myself some credit for it.
So that's sort of the other side of confidence, because we can't always win.
Oh, yeah.
Some days we don't win. And if you have confidence, you give yourself grace. That's beautiful.
Yeah. What is your biggest obstacle that you've overcome in your life?
Well, certainly those first 4 years at Miami, those were rough. I went in trying to be what I thought a head coach should be instead of, being me. And I failed miserably and the women didn't like me. And again, I really like to be liked. So, that was hard, but finally, got vulnerable, stopped blaming everybody else, started working on me, and that changed things for sure. And honestly, what I learned through that has been with me, through this whole thing, because starting my own business in 16, goodness, that's been a journey as well. And certainly through COVID, with no competitions and, no one swimming, it almost took me down. So I'm so thankful, that it has survived and, I'm able to move forward.
Yeah. Maria and I always say some of, your greatest accomplishments often come out of your biggest failures. That's just kind of, classic. So that's great to hear that. Well, wonderful. So, how about if you were to give, one piece of advice out there for our listeners that may be just not an athlete, because we've covered a lot for athletes, but if somebody's listened that is not an athlete and they want to do something that they're just not confident, I just don't know that I'm cut out for that, even though I want to do it. What advice would you give them?
Well, fear is not just an athlete thing. Anytime you have expectations for yourself, other people have expectations for you. When you care about something, I just think it's so important to know that the fear is coming, and that's okay, because you're human. It's learning, hey, let me get honest about it. Let me get them out into the open. Let me get honest about them, and then realize, okay, you're going to go there, but you can't stay there. And so really figuring out, what is my truth? Like, what do I fully believe about myself down deep? Which for some people, they know it right away. For others, it takes a while, because, as women, I think for a long time, when you try to speak your truth, you get knocked down. Humble yourself, and get, like Lily, what? Other people work hard too. So I think sometimes it's hard for us to speak our truth because we've been pushed back a little bit. We've learned to shrink, I think, a little bit. And so really, fully owning your space, and speaking truth, I believe is the only way you're going to be able to move forward from fear, because confidence always, always, always revolves around truth.
I love it.
So if someone wants to work with you directly one-on-one, we'll put the information in the show notes of how they can do that and go to your website. And then the other way, which makes your book so wonderful, is if someone wants to take that 30-day confidence challenge, which your book is based on, is that for non-athletes or just athletes? Like, could a businesswoman do it too?
Well, I made this book specifically for female athletes,
okay,
because female athletes are rarely the priority. And I wanted to make sure that I was doing something specifically for them. But hold tight, because I'm going to be making one in the future.
Awesome.
For the rest of us.
Yes.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
A lot of business women are athletes.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's
so-
true.
Absolutely.
So,
That's true.
yeah,
Maria, you want to
that's
ask
great.
the last question?
Yes. Is there anything that we haven't covered? I mean, you have so much wisdom. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to make sure that people who are listening know?
You know, I think just this 30 days to confident, you know, I'm just so proud of it. You know, I think it's 30 of the what I think are some of the most important lessons about confidence. And so it is just, you know, a short story, a short lesson, and then some challenging questions that you got to get vulnerable with. And as I tell all my clients, like, I can sit here and give you all the information, but if you don't put it to practice and you don't do the work, nothing's going to change. And I got to be honest, in my business, you know, not everybody takes it and actually runs with it. The people that do, you know, I could cry just talking about it. I mean, you know, even somebody like Natalie Hines, to see how much work she put in, and to go from someone who choked at every U.S. Nationals possible, you know, when she was, you know, when she was swimming, to come back and do this. It's just been absolutely amazing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. We love Natalie. We just had her on the show.
Yeah,
and
she
was
mentioned you a
awesome.
lot.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
So that's
Well,
wonderful.
this has been fantastic. I know people are going to get a ton out of it, and we're so grateful for you to join us today.
Thanks for
Thanks.
having me. I loved it.
Thank you.
so much.
It's now time for the takeaways. Maria, you and I have heard the takeaways are the best part of the show.
That's right, Kelly, because the takeaways are curated information, which is what we give to our clients when we coach them.
If you would like to take your performance to the next level in health, life, or leadership, go to our website and schedule your free 30-minute consultation.
Yes, just click on our coaching page and book there. We're looking forward to bringing out the champion in you.
And now the takeaways. So Maria, oh my gosh, that was so fantastic.
Yeah.
Christen
I knew it was going to be a great show.
Yeah. Christen Shefchunas, a confidence coach, an author of her upcoming book. Really, really excited for this book, which is coming out in August. 30 Days to Confident, a 30-day confidence challenge for female athletes. So if you didn't listen to the whole thing, really, really recommend it. But our takeaways, we're going to do 2 each. And Maria, what was your first takeaway?
Well, I mentioned it in the interview, but what I love about her is her authenticity. And that's really what it's kind of her one of her major themes is like, you have to be authentic. You have to identify, you know, your fears. It's the part of, you know, I'm afraid, that's okay. It's the I'm afraid, admitting what you're afraid of, identifying what it is that you stand to lose, you know, being authentic. She's very, you know, she talks about her failures and, you know, it's not all rah, rah, rah. It's like, first we have to figure out where we are, who we really are, what we're really afraid of. So I thought, you know, authenticity is I like authenticity anyway, but it's a beautiful takeaway.
Yeah, that she makes the people she works with make a list of what are you really afraid of? You know, if these things happen, these are the 10 things.
Right.
And
she says, I've seen it all.
Yeah. And then being authentic about who you are that deals with these things.
Right.
You know,
right. That's the other side of it, is that, you know, what are your good, you know, what are the truths that are good, you know, not so, you know, and sometimes we have to dig harder for those because the things we're afraid of are bigger. They seem bigger in our consciousness, but then she, you know, after people identify their truths, then she says, okay, now, is it true that you work hard? You know, is it, or they have to come up with them, I'm sure. Is it true that, you know, that you're, you know, good, that, you know, whatever their truths are. So yeah, that's the other side of it. I like it.
Yeah. And that leads into my first one very nicely, where this is kind of the gold nugget thing, which she talks about, again, listening to the whole thing, but celebrating. And so when you're in this pressure filled situation or a lacking confidence, you're scared, what do you do well? You know, if you're in the last length of a 200-meter long course butterfly, you say to yourself, I've done this before a million times in practice. I'm strong. I finish hard. I'm tough. So those are the things that are the gold nuggets. Those are the things that we need to celebrate. What do you do well? And that was my first takeaway, was the flip side of the fear is this focus on, instead of focusing on the what ifs, it's focusing on what have you done well that really could give you confidence. And let's think about those. Let's line those up. Let's make those anchors. Let's make those your gold nuggets. Let's make that list as well.
Yeah. And that's so good and hard. She says this is hard, partly because as women, we're taught not to stand up and talk about what we're good at, or, it's quiet down, be in the, simmer down. You're not that great. So, it's to have those, keep those gold nuggets. She has a business selling bracelets with the nuggets on it. And it's just a physical reminder of like, what am I doing right? So you're right. The first part, you got to have that second part of the first, or the authenticity does no good. That's wonderful. So my second takeaway was at the end towards the end of the interview, she talked about giving herself grace. And I think surely we've talked about this before, but we can be so hard on ourselves in our mind, and, we're going to make progress, and then we're going to have bad days. And, and if we can just give ourselves grace, to know that sometimes things aren't going to go that well. She told the story of a swimmer who would traditionally go down this kind of bad rabbit hole of negative thoughts. And what the swimmer was finding was that she would still go into the rabbit hole, but just not quite as deep. So she was recognizing that, she was giving herself grace. I'm going down this rabbit hole, but I'm going to stop right here and turn around. And I think being able to forgive yourself and give yourself grace for when you don't have the best day. What about your second?
Yeah. My second and final takeaway was the idea of why women might not be as confident as men. It's our brains. And, I just, not that long ago, I listened to an audiobook that I loved on the female brain. It's called The Female Brain, and how our brains are different than men's, that we have. I don't know the number. We didn't write it down, but it was either 1,200 or 12,000. I'm sure it's 12,000 thoughts per hour or something. And men have
per minute,
per minute. But men have a significantly reduced number of thoughts. So of what women have, that's just the brain, the male brain and the female brain. And so of course we're doing the scary scenarios, the worst scenarios. So that makes so much sense. And I think just knowing that helps the male listeners dealing with women, and helps us women know, okay, the reason that I'm feeling like this is because my brain is producing all these thoughts. So I love that.
I do too. That's a lot of rabbit holes, 12.
Yeah, it's a lot of rabbit holes.
However many it is. And just acknowledging that is the way your brain works, and that our brains work, is giving yourself some grace. Like, oh yeah, okay, there's a lot going on here. And, that's the way I'm made. And, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff. Can't wait for her book to come out. And just love this, again, this adventure, this journey when we get to talk to great champions like Christen.
It is so great.
Love you, Maria.
I love you too, Kelly. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast with host Kelly Palace and Maria Parker. Champions Mojo is produced by Cabra Media, and a new episode debuts every Tuesday. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Follow Champions Mojo on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook @Champions Mojo.